almost had a microphone in my ass. That would have been.
DL, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having us, man.
Black Man, White House, an oral history of the Obama years.
Absolutely.
This is like, if you were watching all of this unfold, as a lot of us were, it was what you kind of knew everybody was thinking, but not saying.
Right.
Is it?
And I think his whole presidency has been that.
Oh, yeah.
His whole presidency has been about saying shit in public and then getting behind the door. Like, what I imagined first happened. Like, it's just, they're actual events, but they're kind of us taking off on what we think they might have been saying when no one was around.
Can we be honest and say that the only person who was saying what all of the people on the right were actually thinking, but is saying it out loud, is probably Trump?
Yeah, probably, yeah. But I think a lot of people have said any number of things and then been brushed back. Like they'll start off to say, I mean, even when we look at Joe Biden, he's an articulate, clean Negro. I mean, so like and then they go, oh, you can't say that shit, so we better like. So I think people have whether intentionally or unintentionally said these things and then got to a place where they just understood that they can't say them out loud anymore.
The book opens with former President Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton is, of course, watching Barack Obama be what he was, which is this powerhouse political orator, and he goes, "Who is this nigga? Wait, who is he?" and everybody on the right did the same thing. Who is this nigga right here? Who is he? Because I think that was the first, and I remember seeing it and go, "Who is this nigga?" Like, I think it's a whole thing that people were saying, and I think that you saw that subsequently people had all of these kinds of reactions to him.
But there's a follow-up joke from Hillary, like on the same page, second page, about Bill Clinton being the actual first black president.
Right.
So I was actually kind of confused by the initial joke. Right. Was it with an A or was it with an R from Bill Clinton?
I think it was an A.
For Bill, it was an A.
Yeah, I think it was an A. But I think that I know for me that I had never seen. Well, obviously, I've seen great orators before. I thought what Jesse Jackson and that speech was spectacular. But I never saw a thing that I thought I said, this guy people are going to dig this guy. Mm-hmm. I didn't think he would be president, but I thought people would dig him in ways that not just black people did. I think like Jesse was a great speaker, but I think like pretty much only us got him. You didn't think that he was going to be like you never got the sense that he could be president, but or that he would resonate nationally. And I thought the first time I saw him, I thought that.
Well, white people went even further out of their way to discredit Jesse Jackson, more so than even Obama. And I think at the risk of maybe offending, they might have had more to work with than they did with Obama.
Yeah, that's true.
Unfortunately.
I think it is what it is. But I think that for me, I think that there were all these, like I remember when, I forgot who it was, said that Mitt Romney would have won if Hurricane Sandy had happened, which meant that God went, fuck you, you're not going to be president. That's literally what happened. Like they would say these things that you just knew that, I remember how careful everybody was at first. And then you would see these cartoons, or you would see the Tea Party coming with guns, or it just became this conversation that nobody had. And I thought the book was just my kind of look at that.
You're sort of articulating all of the popular rage, as Network said, in the 70s, the popular rage over a black president.
Right.
It was pretty incredible when he gave that speech as senator at the DNC that year. That was kind of just mind-blowing.
It was.
And I think you're right. Everybody's like, who is that guy?
Right.
I said, who is that guy?
Yeah, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
You have this other great moment. I mean, it's filled with great jokes and sort of like wonderful cheap shots at a lot of the people who are watching this.
And primarily people, the people who I like the most personally, like I really like Bill Clinton. I love him. I love Hillary Clinton. The people who I really like the most take the biggest, like kind of get the biggest hits. But because I think that there's a perception I play to, of Hillary being in a certain way, of Bill being in a certain way, of the beer summit, the things that we addressed, because at first there was this very deliberate attempt to be so careful that you didn't do anything wrong, that you were almost more offensive that way. That it was almost more offensive to be as delicate as they were, as trying to be as pristine as they were.
But even when they were trying to be delicate, I mean, there were, I remember there was wasn't it the New Yorker who it wasn't the New Yorker who did the monkey cartoon, was it?
Yeah, it was.
That was fucked up.
But
it might not have been it might have been a more Republican, like the National Review or something. But I feel like
the New Yorker did the whole what they were dressed up in Arab in terrorists, which I thought was hilarious.
That one I liked. Yeah.
But I think that what happened with this president is a lot of people who had black friends, and now we got people that live down the street from me, and I work with black people, and I love black players, and I like music, and I've never really seen color. There was something different about the leader of the free nation that drove some people insane. Like I remember recently reading an article by Noam Chomsky, and he talked about how Trump's rise was directly attributable to the fact that older, uneducated white men are dying. I'm physically dying, and the only time is that virtually every other ethnicity is their mortality rates are going higher, but uneducated white men are dying of opiates and alcoholism and suicide, and so they're fighting for their life. And I think he put a bullet in the head of their ideas about themselves. I think he directly became a thing that more than anything else. And so I think that what you see and what you see in the book and what you see now is people really in a way fighting for their survival or fighting for an idea of themselves.
There was something that I heard recently where someone said, I think it was the comic Neil Brennan, I heard him talking, and he said that white people don't know what actual equality is going to mean for them, and how, not disastrous it is, but how different it's going to be if it was a completely equal playing field. And the more that and then my take on that is the more that we sort of get to that place, which we're not very close to, but the more we have things like a black president and mainstream media talks extravagantly about Ferguson and things like that, and we actually dive into these discussions, the more a sort of fringe white minority is just going to flail and freeze.
But listen, if I had a thing and I possessed it and somebody told me to share, like when I was a kid, I never wanted to share my toys. So imagine if like yesterday, and this is, Trump talks about how this judge can't be unbiased, he's biased because he's Mexican, or a Muslim is biased because he's Muslim, and all the things I've said before.
And someone said a woman today, someone in his campaign actually said maybe a woman judge too would be biased.
So what you're saying is only white men are capable of being unbiased. Like you would have to say, like we're talking about Ferguson. Well, the prosecutor his father was killed by a man running from that was having an altercation with the police. But he's in charge of deciding whether police justified the shooting and presenting that to. So that is a level of bias, but what society wants from us, or what a lot of people think, is that we should accept that people can be professional despite their biases, but you don't have to deal with that. And so I think Barack Obama, more than anything else, and I think there's a whole generation, a lot of these kids out here who have never known anything other than a black president, have never known anything other than the way things are now. And for people that have known other ways, it is the death knell for them. And anything that is on the precipice of death fights that much harder. And I think you'll see that in the book, and you'll see it in the political kind of apparatus right now.
You have a quote that Rahm Emanuel says in the book. I mean, it's not a real quote of his, but it essentially could be, which is that the people wanted a black president, but they didn't want a black man to be presidential or do presidential things.
They did.
Which I think is absolutely true. Over the course of the last 8 years, they fought him harder than ever. And obviously, I think that has a lot to do with him being a black president, but also just the way that the party has shifted post Newt Gingrich and the Bush administration.
But I really think there's a difference between liking a black player and a black player being the leader of the team. Right. There's a difference between there literally is, and not for people who have always kind of interacted that way. But if you had spent your whole life pretending to like a thing and never having to have it be a reality, it was cute to say, anybody can be president. I want to live in America, but when a motherfucker actually does it, it ain't fun no more. like it literally was a fun notion. The idea of us directly abutted with the reality of us. And the reality is, America was, in a very short period of time, it literally went from, you got to remember that before he won Iowa, 85% of black people in South Carolina were supporting Hillary because they just couldn't believe that there could be a black president. So it was this huge shift in seconds. And it was like that for black people, but imagine older white men.
But do you think that shift has sort of stayed the course, or do you think it was a lot of people feel like it was an anomaly shift? I mean, we still have Deval Patrick, we have Cory Booker, there are other African Americans in politics, but
I think that I don't know how many, this is just my opinion, I don't know how many black men could stand up to that level of scrutiny and examination. This is the only black dude I've ever known that never did shit wrong. How do you? You never got busted by the police. You never fucked another chick. What are you? Nothing. There ain't no many. That's the last nigga they made like that. They ain't got no more like that. That's it. So I think if the political examination process changes, then obviously, but everything they said about him was like, you had one black man who they couldn't say enough bad things about. Then you had another black man running for the party, Ben Carson, who tried to convince people he was fucked up. Like I really stabbed these people. I did this shit. Like it's just you look at we are in a state of psychosis I've never seen. It's primarily because the reality of him and the idea of America and all those things are swirling around. People don't know what to do.
I've never been convinced that Ben Carson was actually trying to convince anyone of anything but just talking in his sleep.
Yeah, but look at if Barack Obama said, I stabbed a kid because he made me mad, that would have disqualified him right away. But it actually qualified him on the right.
Right.
Because he was what they expected black people to be.
Well, we had this weird thing with this. I guess you could say that, yeah, he was what black people were expected to be. But I also think the right had such a strange primary this year where it really was the crazier thing you could say, the better. Because more so than anything, I think white people felt like I don't want to say all white people, but white people on the far right, on the fringe right, who vote in the primaries, who came into the primary for the first time, feel like their lips had been sealed. And so often they talk about Trump in this way where like he says what's on his mind. Well, it's like, you didn't get to say what was on your mind? I don't understand.
When somebody says that political correctness is this pervasive air of political correctness, they want to say nigga and fag and they want to say evil shit and not want to be judged by it. That's what they want to be able to do it.
Oh, you're being too politically correct. I didn't mean gay that way.
Right. They want to say the most vile shit ever and have that not be how they're judged. And I think, why would you be angry at a man who is eloquent and humane and loves his family and well-spoken and slow to anger? Like, what has he ever done that would make you that hateful? I mean, you could hate his ideas and you could hate his agenda, but to have the level of vitriol, the only thing he could have ever done was be black and actually make you keep the promise you made. You said, okay, anybody can be president, motherfucker, here I am. And you mad.
How can you be mad at a man who made that video with that 106-year-old woman, that old black woman? I turn that video on sometimes when I'm unhappy and just cry and get happy. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
He, for better or for worse, whatever people think, has made us feel better as human beings. If you are just looking at a man who actually embodied everything you said. Work hard and be the best and be decent and play fair.
Family values.
And have family values. And you have the audacity to be black and do it? like if he was a white guy, there were 3 white guys in my house when I grew up. It was 2 white guys. It was JFK, it was Jesus, which that later on I would learn that wasn't true. And there was Martin Luther King, right? And he would be a man that you would have like that because you would be proud. Being honest, would you be proud? What would make you more proud as a parent? to have a man that grew to be, a man like Barack Obama, or a man who grew up to be Donald Trump? Like, honestly, if we're just being honest, what would make you more proud as a parent? And I think all of the things, all of the anger they ascribe to this president is because he has the nerve to be everything we said we wanted and black doing it.
Do you think he's had a successful presidency?
Sure.
So do
Sure. I don't think he is, he's not as political or as craven as you need to be, I think to have an agenda that succeed at all costs. But I think that by any metric, he has been a successful president. And he has been a particularly successful president when you consider the backdrop of the bullshit he had to go against and what was happening in the country. It's like black men have been janitors for a long time, so we're used to clean the shit up. So I don't, from that aspect, but I think if we're just being fair, it's impossible to say that he hasn't had a successful president, and it's impossible to see the level of vitriol and hatred he gets because he just did everything he said he would do to a greater or lesser degree. He told you he'd give you health care, he did it, and you mad? Like, you mad? Like,
oh my God, Kentucky, right, is
right.
trying to repeal it,
right.
And they're the state that's benefiting the most from it.
The most. I literally think that you could sell the entire southern region of the United States of America and be a better country. I literally think that. Like, you could have a reverse Louisiana Purchase and we'd be a better nation. We should have a fucking garage sale. I swear to God. I swear to God. And you can hate gays and have guns and love Jesus. We can call it dumb fuckistan. And you could, and we would be a better country because that idea, and it's pervasive everywhere, but that idea lives well there. Mm-hmm. The idea that I'm better than you, that I'm superior to you, that this is my right, that idea, that all of that comes from it. And I'm not saying that it's not everywhere else, but it finds a welcoming host there.
Can we take the black population out of
it?
this?
We take
it with us?
Well, we got to take some white women out because we need them, and we need them for their quarterbacks. But we can get hate from Fresno and Bakersfield. It'd be great.
Now, in this book, you have Donald Trump sprinkled throughout. I'm wondering if that was something that came up later as you were sort of...
Well, we were writing the book, and then when we were writing the book, you got to remember, it was like in the summer and through. So we had already started down the path, and no one knew, up until I think February, nobody knew he would really be, like this would really happen. Like, it was funny, and it was so he didn't... I underestimated him in the book as to what he would mean.
Are we underestimating him now? Because as of right now, there are headlines on every paper that are like, Trump is blowing it, the campaign is flaming out, he calls the staffers together, is yelling at them, he's not just criticizing the judge, as you said, for being Mexican, it could be a Muslim, it could be a woman. Everyone's saying that he's flaming out, but this is the same stuff he was doing in the primary.
Yeah, but the primary was a specific group of people, and now you open it up to the country, and everybody gets to play. So I don't know. I think that Donald Trump, to be frank, there have been bigoted, misogynistic, hateful men to run the White House. There have been more people who hated black people as president. Like, hating black people or hating minorities or hating women, disliking women as president is not a new idea. It's retro. Like, this is, like, it's there were people who openly would say these things. I think Donald Trump says the things, and the only reason, the problem with him and with the country is, and the reason is, I think, he says what they say behind the scenes out loud.
It's not coded in rhetoric.
That's right. Because name me one thing he said that was so patently offensive, and I'm not just talking about rhetoric, that you went, I will deny you my support. You've lost my vote. Now, I love Hillary and I like Bernie, and if there are things they could do that would make me say, to me, I will not vote for you. Now, you're saying, I don't care what he said about black people, I don't care what he said about women, I don't care what he said about Asians, I don't care what he said about Latins. There's never been, what they're saying is we'd rather have a homophobic, misogynistic, bigoted, hateful man versus her.
Do you think that a lot of the response, stuff like you're speaking of right now, is similar to what happened with Barack Obama, but now it's for a woman, it's another minority, and the country is responding? Like, we said anybody could be president, but we didn't really mean a woman could be president.
Well, and I also think that she didn't have the same set of tools that he has. She didn't have, I think they're not the same temperament. They didn't have the same kind of path. I think that to be it's very difficult to be a black man doing anything, and it's probably pretty difficult to be a woman to have to do some of the things she does. And so I think that they kind of feel familiar, but they get the level their attacks at other things because she's been around so long. Like, I like Bernie. I think he's a well-intended man, but when you talk about the future, this is how America is so hungry for change that they want 2 old white men to do it. Like, like 2 old white dudes are going. That's the best way to is these dudes. I mean, we've had that before.
Yeah.
America has these fits and starts. The idea of them and the reality of them. Like, the most recent example of that is they put Harriet Tubman on the front of the $20 bill and left Andrew Jackson on the back. So a slave on the front and a slave on her back, which means that even when black people earn money, we still got a supervisor. You dig what I'm saying?
It's just a reminder, like it's such a sad reminder.
That's the aspirational idea of us,
right, and
the reality of us, all in one fucking bill. Is the most famous slave, a freedom fighter who guided her people, and one of the most prolific slave owners America's ever had. On the same note.
I think people forget sometimes too, and I think you bring this up by stating that 2 white men are really at the top of the polls in many ways. Like, people forget that having a black man or woman or a white woman in charge just sort of objectively brings a different perspective.
It does.
And people neglect that. She's called establishment, but she does have a completely different perspective in terms of her life experiences, and so did Barack Obama.
Listen, I think that
he could never speak to Ferguson the way a white president could. She could never, a white president couldn't speak to Ferguson the way that he could, or a white man couldn't speak to equal pay,
But I also think that has worked in reverse, and we'll allude to that in the book. I think that because we would give him a pass, like, if you got to remember when Rodney King happened, and those officers were found innocent, that it was George Bush Sr. that said, "Hey man, we have to do something." But I think that because a black president would get a pass, he didn't have the kind of call to action a lot of people would have. So he could be empathic, but they would have felt pressure to do something. He could just say, "He looks like my son," and so I think obviously it has some has. Overall, I think that even if the idea is that, to me, in my estimation, that people who never thought they could be something believe that it's possible, by that definition alone, he's a successful president. He's an aspirational man.
Absolutely. Let's open it up to the audience for some questions. Right here.
Hey, DL. How's it going, man?
Hey, man.
Thanks for raising an important discussion. In your opinion, in let's say 30 years from now, how do you think other history books will look back and view President Obama?
I think that they'll look at it the way a lot of things, under the light of history. How silly we were that it was that acrimonious. How silly and how much folly it was that people thought that people look back, I hope, and say, "Wow, they were really that was cutting edge to them that we had a black president," or I hope that in the light of history that they will look back and see how silly a lot of this was.
Next question.
Hi, DL.
Hey.
I was wondering, how much influence do you think comedians on shows like SNL and The Daily Show have on politics?
Far too much. I think it's a shame. I think that there's a level of honesty that I think that comedy has at its core that I think people are uncomfortable with, and I think that a lot of people dance around the issue, and I think the one thing about comedy is that it doesn't, and because of that, it gets a lot more credit than it deserves.
Do you think mainstream or cable news outlets deserve any credit at this point? Do you think they've done a good job?
No. I mean, we are where we are primarily because people got because people got.
People need
They
ratings.
know we're here. Shit. I think we are why we are because of the loudest people in radio and television that, on these cable outlets have kind of driven them. I think Donald Trump is a direct creation of that. He's if he's Frankenstein, they're his creator. And I think, it's just Hannity and O'Reilly and Limbaugh and Beck, Glenn Beck and all these people created this anger and this animus, this hatred. Like, I can understand literally that you have different ideological ideas. I can't understand the anger associated with it.
Do you remember like 5 years ago when everyone, maybe it was like 6, 7 years ago, when everyone was up in arms about Glenn Beck even existing?
No.
And now, culturally, we think Megyn Kelly is good for some reason?
You know what? Glenn Beck got me my show on CNN.
Really?
Yes. Me and Glenn used to talk all the time. Because we didn't, I met him, I hated him, I would talk about how much I hated him. So he had me on his show, and we talked for an hour, and we would talk after that. And I came to a place where I at least respected his process and what he believed. And then he went further, and I couldn't.
Created the blaze.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, that's too much. But I think that there is this idea that can only be attributed to the fact that I believe in some way, for some reason, I'm superior and you're not in your place. And you're not where you belong. And I think I think that the thing that resonates with me the most is I think President Obama has made America keep a promise, and they don't like it. A lot of people do. I think a lot of people do, and a lot of people don't.
I'm going to push this question one more time because it's something that I'm mildly obsessed with, which is Megyn Kelly.
Sure.
And the idea that she has become this sort of beacon of moderateness for the Republican Party on Fox News, which I just find completely insane, personally.
But even Megyn has said some things, and the idea that she could like when she said Jesus was black, or everybody knows Santa was white and Jesus was white. She said that, like, Santa is an imaginary motherfucker. You get that? He's an imaginary motherfucker, like he is. And
he could be any color you want him to be. You just imagine him that way.
Right. You just say, hey, guess what? Like, it was no white dudes like driving.
Is your dad black? Then Santa's probably black because he's the one dressing up like Santa that year.
Right. This Santa Santa was black, and Jesus was like the whole. And it was very benign to a lot of people, and but I think because everybody's so right and extreme and bombastic, she's a little bit of crazy in a pretty nice package. You know what I mean? No, she's an attractive woman who doesn't speak loudly and seems sober and reasonable. And then, we all got an uncle that start out like that at a party, and then you go, this motherfucker's crazy. Like the first 5 minutes, you go, wow, this is. Then he said, and I think she's that.
Those ratings dip a little bit. She'll be shooting the crazy gun.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely what's gonna happen. When I watch people try to tell me that Donald Trump isn't racist, I go, and it's a white dude, you don't get to fucking get a vote in this. If nobody's ever called you nigga, you can't decide if somebody's racist. You no, he didn't mean that. Like,
yeah, that's the thing.
Like how much, like how low.
He's just trying to get
bar?
People's attention. He's just trying to get people's attention.
When do enough people finally go, now, all right, that's enough? Like, he'd almost have to say, the N-word, I hate them, and he'd almost have to be so succinct, which no one would do, so exact, that's the only way people can justify it, because they all feel the way he does to a greater or lesser degree.
The thing that you brought up blows my mind when you say he's racist, or you say he said this outlandish sexist thing, and someone says, well, he didn't necessarily mean it, he's just trying to get people's attention. Isn't that could be even worse? He's running for president.
The fact that he knows that there'll be no penalty for it. There'll be no cost to pay. No one's going to deny his support. No one's going to tell him that he's disqualified himself for the presidency. Like, it's not even just the things he says. It's like, getting sued by the federal government because you won't rent to poor people, black people. And he said, I didn't want, it wasn't black people, it was poor people. People are saying,
okay.
Right,
Yes.
I can judge you by what you've done. When you sit up there with a bowl of fucking, a bowl of nachos, and you tell me that you love the Hispanics and you don't even give a fuck how that looks, and then somebody can still just like Bill O'Reilly. I've been on the show. Is telling the judge, even though you didn't do anything wrong, you should recuse yourself because of the way that it looks. That's how do you like? It's an insane situation, and all of that, everything we're going through right now, is because a bunch of people got driven insane. The fact that a black man who was everything that they said they wanted, everything, that's the psychosis where everything they said they wanted, had the nerve to make us keep a promise and be black doing it.
Absolutely.
That's my estimation.
Well, guys, the book is Black Man, White House, An Oral History of the Obama Years by D.L. Hughley. D.L., thank you so much for being here, man. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you.